Women on Change family, aka WOC fam. How are you? Lexima Jeanose here, the founder of Women on Change and the Lead and Earn program, where we are inspiring you to take the lead and earn your change, your creativity, your world. So today's video is going to be about the parents and the kids. We've been talking about the general aspect of Women on Change, what it means to lead. Now, we want to focus on the core group that we have centered this program around, which is the kids and the families. And let's start off. We'll discuss really how can you, as a parent or as a youth, 30 and under, right? How are you able to understand what it is that is your worth or that you want to lead? And let's start with the parents, right? Because ultimately, we all, as I said, we all come from a tree. That tree has roots. And I think how do you lead yourself, how you lead yourself as a parent, oftentimes is the model for that child. So when a child in school, for example, we've worked in so many communities where we got to learn the challenges that the kids are having. And while schools or after school programs or community leaders are trying their best to see how they can help these families, but really it's the families that I believe who really need to find ways to actually figure out where did their tree or their root bent. And there's a blind spot, as I would say, is sometimes we don't want to look at that because it's too painful or it's too shameful or it's too emotional, whatever that reason might be. But what happens is that bent or shame, however you want to identify it as, ultimately is played out again and again. If you have kids, it just keeps going. So I read something recently where it says that oftentimes folks who want the kids to change are the ones that need to change. So oftentimes when you hear a parent complaining about a child is this and that, the problem, not all the time, but oftentimes stems from something that's going on in that environment or that, I call it the mirror for that child. And oftentimes it's the parents. So how are you as a parent, right, leading yourself to be able to help your child lead a life that is worth it? And I think there are many ways you can look at it. One, you have to be able to understand how you live now, right? And that could be a number of things, whether it's the decisions that you make, whether it's the places or the behavior. It could be a number of things. But what I've learned so far is what I find is folks who are ashamed of looking at certain things oftentimes is where the change needs to happen. So for example, let me talk about myself. I don't have kids, but I have so many nephews and nieces. I think I have like 25 right now, or so far. And the youngest is 3 months or 4 months old. He's adorable. So what I've learned is, with me, one thing I had to understand and I've gone through so much unique experiences in life, I had to be willing to sit, and I've talked about how I dealt with depression and all these things, but the more, and they offer, I've learned somewhere that depression is a woman in black who comes and you have to let her sit and do whatever. But what I had to do, I realized, even though I experienced this so long ago, relatively so long ago, is what I learned is I had to really process my emotions. The pain, like the stuff I've gone through, never processed them, just buried them, whether it's sexual abuse, whether it's depression, whether it's being parentified or not knowing who I am. I mean, so many, right? But I had to sit with it and really process it, okay? The other thing is why, right? Um, how you live yourself now is the answer to why like certain things are happening. For example, I had this thing of like constantly like, and I have a lot of energy for those who have come into contact with me. I have a lot of energy, but it wasn't always like that, right? As a kid, at one point, that energy was like, you know, pressed, and I think all that created, whether it was with parentified or being abused, I think that energy just sort of buried itself out, and it just caused so much pain. So what I had to understand is part of the reason why I had to really learn certain patterns of myself, where I had to put so much energy into work doing things, whether it's helping, constantly supporting. I was living outside of myself essentially. So what I had to learn is, how do I find that little energy or these energies within me that weren't mine? So I had to learn that. And the one way I did that is really look at, how do I live now? And you really have to be honest, right? Some things are really ugly. Like, why am I doing this, right? What is the purpose of it? Does it make me happy, or does it make someone else happy, right? And then once you find the why, the next question is, what do you do about it, right? So as a parent, too often we see, our kids are struggling with this, but is mom and dad going through something in the house? Or is the single dad working too much, no time for the child? Or is the single mom working so much that she doesn't even know? Like, her little kid is being abused by this monster that she trusted, right? Excuse my language for calling anybody monster, but no one is a monster. What I've learned so far is that, and I had called somebody who abused me a monster many times. So what I've learned so far is that people are dealing with so much pain inside that they're not able to express it, whether it's their sexuality, whether it's, I mean, it could be anything, religion. If they can't express that emotion, they find a way to do it. And sadly, sometimes it's abusing children, sometimes it's beating their husbands or wives, sometimes it's drugs. It's a number of things, right, to suppress or to at least maintain some sense of sanity, some sense of like, I'm alive, but really you're dying inside. So, and in mine, as I said before, mine was, I was addicted to like working. Like, I mean, when I say working, I had to be doing something, but there is a purpose for that. I realized that I do like that stuff. The difference is, I was doing it, I was doing it where I wasn't really satisfied, um, and I didn't know why. And then eventually I learned why, right? So it's the same thing. I think to lead yourself is to make decisions or take action that you believe are best for you. And if they are not, if you're doing things that aren't, what's happening is, if you have children, it's the same thing. That energy that you're putting off, it's affecting your children. Whether you're faking it, whether you're living an authentic life, it will affect your kids. You can give them all the best advice as you can as parents, but ultimately the behavior that's out there, you are modeling, they're modeling it. And so how do you help a child who's struggling, whose parents are not in the picture, only teachers, who have to be mom and dad to them at the same time? How do you do that? So this is where the generational mentoring piece come into play with the Lead and Earn program. I don't want to say force, we challenge you, okay? We challenge you to look at your tree, your family tree. And I had to do that, whether it's going to Haiti, questioning my parents, like my siblings who are older than me, and they've shared stuff I didn't know, like about me, like me as a kid trying to be that little savior between two grown adults. So I think one of the best ways that we can help children who are struggling today is to do the work ourselves as parents, right? So can a parent look at the mirror and say, hey, what's wrong with me? And try to solve that. And I know it's hard, because sometimes there's financial, but I think the biggest thing is figuring out there's a problem and not be ashamed to live with that is the biggest decision. All right. Until then, I hope this video finds you well, and don't forget to click and stay in touch. Follow us. All right? Cheers.